Hey, it's Sam. I'm making this quick forecast for the new moon in Scorpio, which is happening on December 2nd at about 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. I'm sorry, Eastern time. It's going to be a new moon in Scorpio, which will be a time when the sun and moon come together in Scorpio. It's happening at the very beginning of Jyeshta Nakshatra. Jyeshta is ruled by the god called Indra, Lord Indra, who is the king of the gods. And it's about, stepping up and fighting the good fight as it relates to the sign of Scorpio. There's a legend of Lord Indra that has to do with being swallowed by the dragon who stole all the water from the earth. Lord Indra allows himself to be swallowed, and then he cuts himself out of the belly of the dragon in order to return all the water to the earth. This is a quality of Scorpio, this kind of emotional heroism, where we allow ourselves to be, you might say, swallowed up by emotion at times so that we can get back to a more stable, solid, devotional state. So this is the real sort of transformation of Scorpio, where we connect with something more eternal than just our momentary emotions. The downside of Scorpio is where we can become kind of emotionally unstable as we try to stabilize our emotions. The depth of emotion is related to pure feeling, not emotion, which is where we try to connect with something external that will make us feel good internally. That creates a lot of restlessness and emotion, and we feel that stress in Scorpio. So this is an important lesson for the next month, starting on December 2nd, as the sun and moon come together in Scorpio and Jyeshta Nakshatra. Be a good time to have that emotional heroism, which means that you're willing to go deeper than just the emotions and go into that source of pure love that's not dependent on something external satisfying you. So keep that in mind. Now, Mercury will also be in Scorpio at that time, so it brings together this idea of being able to synthesize ideas and maybe connect to the heart, to bring your ideas into the heart. But it's also a time when it's often hard to communicate, because Mercury in Scorpio is kind of confused about details and not as flexible and creative and curious. I mean, we might be curious, but we don't explain things as well, and we tend to get too emotional. It's kind of like, how well can you explain things when you're crying or when you're all emotionally upset? So Mercury in Scorpio brings that nature also. So you want to be aware of that and know that you might be, getting a little bit carried away. Scorpio has a tendency toward imagined fears and worries. So it's kind of like that, the fear, like the imagined fear of losing the thing that we love so much, because we know, that we love things so much that the thought of losing it is kind of terrifying. The life force comes through our heart, and Scorpio is where we feel the vulnerability of that life force itself, like, oh my God, if I lose this, then what? And so we kind of obsess. So when we're worried about outer circumstances fulfilling that, Scorpio can be kind of a diabolical sign at times. But when we connect with something more eternal, then it's much more integrated, and so those are big themes. And so, as I say, when Mercury's there, Mercury is the faculty of speech, discrimination, playfulness, curiosity. It's good when we, like in air and earth, where we're more practical and where we're more flexible. So we can tend to get bogged down in our thinking and speech when Mercury's in Scorpio. And of course, we still have Rahu and Saturn in Libra. One of the big shifts of the last week or so has been Mars going into Virgo. Mars is going to be in Virgo off and on until July of 2014. Now, in my 2014 forecast, I talk about that quite a bit. He'll poke his head into Libra for about a month and a half, but for the most part, this Mars-Virgo energy we're going to be working on for the next, really through the middle of next year. Mars-Virgo, Mars-Libra. Mars will be in either of those two signs between now and like September of 2014, just those two signs. So it's a real important lesson to understand. And so Mars has just went into Virgo, which has to do with one of the things is getting your habits and routines in order. That's a very developed and high quality of Mars. And Virgo, Mars is about destroying what's making us weak, and Virgo is all of our habits and routines. So you might notice that you've suddenly felt compelled to clean and to be, to arrange your house or your apartment better or something like that. Mars in Virgo brings that kind of nature. And also, we're having a big Venus-Jupiter opposition right now. I talked about that last week. And, Venus and Jupiter are going to be going back and forth with each other for the next several months, until early March of 2014, bringing this kind of back and forth between, our personal gratification and desires and our desire to want to enjoy life, which is Venus, and the bigger picture and connecting with things that are more eternal and more, that give us a higher sense of meaning and purpose, and religious, which is Jupiter. I didn't say spiritual because all the planets are spiritual, but it's more religious, which has to do with what we believe in. So even if you think, well, I'm spiritual but not religious, you're talking about the religious part probably, which is what you believe in, a sense of belief, which gives you hope. Religion doesn't necessarily mean you have to be, like a Christian and go to church. It means what you believe in. That's your religion, your belief. So what you believe and those higher principles that you believe in are different than what makes you happy in the moment. Bringing those two things together are really important, and in fact, this is why Venus is exalted in Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac, where we take liberation, because we have to bring our desires and our desire to be happy and experience beauty and joy on earth and find happiness for no reason, find happiness and beauty in everything, which is Pisces. So bringing the Venus-Jupiter, or I should say, harmonizing the Jupiter-Venus connection rather than having them being at odds is a big part of spiritual liberation and spiritual growth. It doesn't have to be in conflict, but often it is, because we're tangled up in our desires and we kind of compartmentalize those things. So that's also a big dynamic that's happening right now. And look for these Scorpio themes to play out, these themes that have to do with Jeshta and Lord Indra, and being willing to go into the, those insecurities, but then return the water to the earth, which is about, allowing yourself to be swallowed by the darkness, but then return the beauty to the earth. This is really the powerful Scorpio mentality, is where when we're willing to take on and bear the brunt and bear the pain ourselves, it's actually very devotional and very generous and very much about holding that emotional space and being emotionally strong for others. This is the powerful Scorpio mentality. That's why Scorpio is usually a good sign for healers, counselors. You'll often find people that have that placement, though. They're very good healers and counselors when they're holding space for others, but then themselves personally, they can also get personally kind of overwhelmed by their own insecurities and stresses and fears. So again, be aware of this difference between holding a lot of emotional space for others and being more generous, and getting worried and tangled up in your own emotional space as well. So now I'm going to do the forecast for all 12 signs, and if you're one of my members, then you'll get that forecast. So anyway, let me know what you think, and have a great one.